What was abundant and is scarce now? Cheap cars. I remember when I was younger 15-20 years ago it was easy as pie to find a $200, $500 beater in good condition. I had people who would simply give me their old broken VWS for scrap value and I'd Frankenstein multiple cars onto one good working one. Now anything drivable and in decent condition is $1,500, $2,000. Parts cars sell for more than what I used to find and drive. Specifically also, mid to late 90s VWS. At one point I had like 7 in my yards in differing conditions. Now I can't find one for sale within 100 miles of where I am at. In Halifax NS, where I live, bats. As a kid, if you were outside near the woods in a backyard or something like that at dusk, you could look up and almost always catch a glimpse of bats soaring around overhead looking for bugs. I loved it. About 10-12 years ago, white nose syndrome killed 90 of the population of bats in Nova Scotia. Haven't seen one since, but there's an effort to repopulate with bat boxes that I'm thinking of getting into, though I don't have a good piece of property for it. DVD Blu-rays. Physical media is important. Not just for collecting but to make sure that controversial and challenging episodes movies don't disappear from history. For example, Disney World War II propaganda cartoons, The Simpsons Michael Jackson episode, and the censored 11, to name a few. The Looney Tunes disclaimer said it best: these cartoons are being presented as they were originally created, because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming that these prejudices never existed. Realistic housing rentals in most cities' burbs let a couple making $100,000 combined could get a decent place. These days, it's almost forget looking until you have $1 million to burn on a house that was $400,000 anywhere from 5 to 10 years ago, with none little or GA improvements made, which seems to be remediation work for long-standing problems more and more. Housing is just utterly insane anymore and it will crater as it has done more than once in the last 30 years. I would say making friends when you are younger. I mean, yeah, you can still make friends but they don't have the same feeling as a steel bond that you made when you were younger. In addition that there are so many different topics to relate to that it can become hard to connect to a person these days. Side note, I didn't really socialize that much when I was young because I didn't know how, so this might be a biased opinion. Kind and polite drivers. I remember when I first got my driver's license approximately 15 years ago as a teenager, people would let me in line, use their turn signals, only drive 5 to 10 miles per hour above speed limit, and wave out of kindness. These days everyone drives like an $8 hole non-stop tailgating, don't let you in line, drive 30 miles per hour over the speed limit, etc. When Europeans first arrived in the Americas, Pilgrim era, lobsters were so common they were considered to be like beach rats. You could walk down the beach and just pick them up out of the water. Prisoners would be fed lobsters because they were so plentiful and undesirable. It was considered torture to be fed lobster. Sharks in general. Oceanic white-tip sharks specifically were thought to have been the most popular vertebrate on the planet, have suffered 99 fishing-induced declines across their range, and are extirpated functionally extinct in areas. It's not impossible that we make the most popular vertebrate extinct. At least in the US I notice a reduction in kindness, politeness and caring about the other. Not to paint with too wide a brush as local calls for action to help to get responses. But rudeness, random fits of entitlement and anger, road rage, all towards a stranger. Please people just chill. Freedom of speech. Now, everyone is offended with everything. Thinking. Having easy access to internet and information tend to make us stop thinking. People stop trying when they have a problem and go with easy way of googling the solution. While the earth has a vast amount of water, only a small percentage is fresh water available for human consumption. Increasing population, climate change, and mismanagement have led to water scarcity issues in certain regions. Insects. You know, when I was a young toddler, and you drove for a trip, you'd have to wipe off the front of your car and clean your windshields because of all the bug guts. Now, not so much, almost non-existent. A few hopeful ones: lead-based house paint, ozone holes, DDT. All of which are now rarer thanks to successful global regulatory action, journalistic attention, and the resulting realignment of corporate incentives. A few hopeful ones: lead-based house paint, ozone holes, DDT. All of which are now rarer thanks to successful global regulatory action, journalistic attention, and the resulting realignment of corporate incentives. Fish. Explorers in the early days of Canada would describe schools of cod that would be so massive they would slow the progress of ships. Overfishing has devastated the fish stocks in the region. Chestnut trees were once common on the east coast of the US and Canada. A blight largely eliminated most of them in the early 20th century. Good fortune, kindness, wealth except for a very few, civil rights. Most importantly, politicians not being elitist, greedy cunts that are not subservient to the whims of billionaires. Big animals. Animals in the wild that I've seen for half a century are getting smaller and smaller. Coyotes, wolves, deer and even moose seems to be a lot smaller now than ever. Natural resources such as oil, natural gas, coal, etc., which were widely exploited and used in the past, but now become very scarce due to overexploitation and consumption. Birds. I used to wake up every morning to the sound of birds, and that would continue throughout the entire day. Now I barely hear it chirp in the morning. Gold. It used to be found in huge nuggets. Now in North America like an ounce or so for every ton of material run through the sluice box is considered okay. Employers that will accept candidates that are qualified for a role and not make candidates jump through hoops just to get their resume seen by a human. Good quality video games. Could enjoy a few games with friends. Now, not a lot are interesting anymore and sometimes mods can make it fun. Lightning bugs. When I was a kid you'd look into the backyard at night and there would be uncountable numbers. Now, just darkness. Knee blue crabs. If you go to Massachusetts, Maine, or such and order steamed crabs, there's a 90% chance they came from Louisiana. Insects swarming around streetlights. I'm talking clouds of insects, not 5 or 6. I haven't seen that in 30 years or more. Snow during winter. When I was a kid there would be snow for months, now there is barely snow for a week, if we are lucky. Bees, butterflies, lightning bugs, fence rows, wild raspberries, wild blackberries, clover fields just to start. Snow. Mid-December in Ontario and there hasn't been a snowfall here that wasn't entirely melted by the next day. Fireflies. Grew up with a storm of them on warm summer nights. Now it seems they no longer exist. Boredom. Time to daydream. It used to be an accepted part of life to sometimes have nothing to do. PC video games that are offline. Used to be all of them, now we need online for single-player games. Fireflies. Saw them all the time when I was a kid. Now I think I've seen 2 in the last 25 years. Time. All this development's supposed to give more time to relax but everyone seems always busy. Chestnuts. Chestnut trees were all over. Almost all died. Some tree disease killed them. Clean food. Industrialization has led to a significant increase in food contamination. Big animals in Africa. Although it's not looking good for medium-sized either. Whale tails. You used to see them everywhere. Now they're pretty much extinct. Reasonable prices in America. Houses, cars, groceries, gasoline, normal life. Common sense and kindness kind not nice. There is an extreme difference. Emo. I've read that copper is actually getting a lot more intensive to mine. Biodiversity. Battles and wars all over the world but now it's relatively peaceful. Buffalo. The white man thinned the herd to kill off the natives. As a kid, I had all the time in the world. At 62, not so much. Butterflies. I've never heard a good reason why. Midwest. Interest on my bank account. I used to have 5 in the 80s. Insects in your windscreen when driving through rural areas. Resilience and emotional intelligence. Also accountability. Tree frogs in Florida. Payphones in US cities' airports. Available housing for renters. 18 all East in Australia anyway. An affordable or moderately priced house or apartment.